Okay, picking up where we left off on page 13 in the text, we're talking about the business profiles and business processes. The business profile is basically a description of what it is the company does for a living. You know, an overview of the company's mission, its function, its organization, its products, its services, its customers, suppliers, competitions, constraints, and all those kinds of things. And believe it or not, if you're an outsider, and you get hired as a system analyst to come in and do a project, man, one of the first things I would do is go to that company's website and research, what it is they do for a living. What's their corporate, their corporate philosophies. Is it a very strict, authoritarian, military style chain of command, or is it kind of a loose organization? I mean, I don't want to know those kind of things prior to stepping into the interview on the first day to talk to them. And the business processes, the specific set of transactions, events, results that can be described and documented. The business process model. And typically they do a business process model through, little graphics and all, but you can just handwrite it. It doesn't have to be graphics that show how the business processes actually work. So let's talk about how businesses actually operate. And in the book, they kind of have some wishful thinking. They talk about how, in the old way, the administrative staff used the office systems, and that operational people used, just operational computers, and that middle top managers used, decision support systems, and top managers use these executive support systems. And then they go on to say, in the new way of thinking, that all employees use everything, and that everyone uses decision support systems at different levels. That's a little optimistic. I mean, there are still people out there where, the admin person, prints the email of the boss and carries it in and puts it in the in basket. Yeah, those people are still there. They still exist. You'll create an entire MIS system that has these fantastic tools, and yet the managers won't use them. The managers will walk down the hall and talk to the MIS department and say, could you run me a query that does this, this, and this? And the first time it happened to me, I said, oh, well, come on around, sit around my shoulder, and I'll show you how you can do this. Well, they really weren't interested in learning how to do it. And they really, really, really wanted me to do it for them. And so after a while, I just said I'd quit volunteering to teach them. I'd go, oh, okay. And I'd do the stuff for them and bring it to them and say, okay, here's what you asked for. Or, is this what you asked for? Knowing full well it would be a lot better if they were actually touching the keys themselves. But in the real world, there's scenarios that you can't get them to touch the keys. So, okay, let's continue on. On page 15, they talk about enterprise computing. Big information systems that support, company-wide information and data. And the whole point of an integrated MIS, Management Information System, is that you have one database that supports everything. You don't have, the salespeople have a sales database, and the finance people have a finance database, and the billing people and the HR people all have these separate databases. That creates a tremendous amount of chaos. Something simple like a customer calls up and says, hey, I've moved, here's my new address. Well, they may have put it in the billing database, but they didn't put it in the customer database. So, when the salespeople show up to demonstrate their new product, they're walking into the wrong building because you've moved. So the whole point of these big information systems is to have a single database. Does that sound like a test question? Okay, continuing on, Walmart has a fantastic inventory control system, probably one of the best. They know exactly where everything is, they know where things are on the trucks and how long it's going to take to get there. Boeing has a fantastic, production scheduling system. The Hilton Hotels, has a pretty decent reservation system, and they can tell, anticipate, events and figure out, where people are staying and what prices to charge. I mean, it's all pretty doggone cool. Those are examples of enterprise computing. So there's this thing called Enterprise Resource Planning, ERP, which is the combination of everything. It's like if I buy an ERP system, and ERPs are horribly expensive. You can spend millions of dollars implementing an ERP for your company. But again, the whole point is you end up with one integrated database and everything's cool. Okay. Continuing on page 15 to talk about transaction processing. You guys remember the movie Office Space? Where the main character is sitting there and the boss comes by and says, hey, you forgot to put the cover sheet on your TPS report. Well, the TPS report, the transaction processing system, that's what they were talking about, the TPS report. So transaction processing is usually the meat and potatoes of an MIS system. It's the daily data entry. And unfortunately, it's probably pretty raw. I mean, it might include, like a billing system. I'm billing my time against a particular client. It may contain, tons and tons of information about, between 2 and 4, I spent time working on the kumquat client. And between this and this and this. So it has an awful lot of data, but quite frankly, most people don't need it at that level. They need it kind of summarized or cleaned up somehow. So, a customer order processing or accounts receivable or warranty claims, those are all good examples of transaction processing systems. TPSs typically have lots of roles. And they verify the data, they check the customer, they do all sorts of low level, bottom of the pyramid kind of work. Continue on page 16. Then they have business support systems, and they provide job related information to users at all levels. They can work hand in hand with the TPS, but generally provide information. And I guess we really haven't gone over the definition, but the difference between data and information. Transaction processing deals mostly with data, where it's just facts. It's just tons and tons and tons of facts, but not very much useful context. When you get to the business support, you're kind of culling all that together, and so now you have more information, a little bit less data. Okay, so all sorts of ways that you can use information system. And then we have knowledge management systems. Knowledge management systems are very specialized, and they draw upon a database. And it could be something simple like, let's say that you're a loan officer, and you type in, somebody comes in and they want to buy a house or a car. And you type in their income and all the rest of their stuff, and this knowledge management system is going to come back and say, yeah, you should go ahead and give them a loan or not, because it kind of knows the procedure. It's been taught, in quotation marks, how to analyze a customer's credit to determine whether or not they're creditworthy again. So that's an example of a knowledge management system. So some knowledge management system is not quite that specific. It could be like all the business processes in your entire company could be in one giant knowledge management system. So you type in like a keyword and it brings you up to, okay, here's how you start the boiler, as an example. Here's how you approve a loan. Here's how you you can have a whole bunch of things. Doesn't have to be one tiny little piece. It could be a collection of these business rules that have been synthesized and put in. Typically, companies don't build these things themselves necessarily. They hire a company that does this for a living. They come in, they build them a knowledge management system, and then, of course, the company has to start feeding it all in. Okay, on page 17, they talk about user productivity. Yeah, there are some technologies that actually help productivity, particularly working in groups. Personal productivity, I think we kind of beat that horse. There's all sorts of specialized software that helps you do whatever it is you do for a living. Probably the only fertile ground left is group-related productivity improvements, where I go in and say, 5 people are on this team, and we're all doing this system. I need to figure out some way to to figure out when Susie goes on vacation, how am I going to account for that into my Gantt chart for my productivity for the week? Those kinds of scenarios. And system integration. Most large companies have these systems that combine, all this transaction processing and business support and knowledge management and user productivity features all together in one giant system, which is kind of cool. Okay, so on page 18 they talk about what information systems people actually use, and they have this. That's not the right diagram. Oh no, I lost the diagram. There it is. Okay, there's the diagram. And at the top of the pyramid, of course, is the top dog for the companies. And, they have middle managers and supervisors, and then the lowly grunts at the bottom. Obviously, top managers have to have specialized executive support systems that talk directly to their kind of needs, and their needs are not what are we doing tomorrow. Their decisions are, should I close the plant in Cincinnati? Big things where they have to do lots and lots of analysis to give them some advice on whether or not they want to open or close a plant. Middle managers, they're more like, okay, should this production run last for a couple more days or not? That kind of question. Supervisor and team leaders are like, should we do overtime to finish this production run or not, because we're running a little behind? And then operational employees are, this part's not fitting exactly right. Maybe I should look up the instructions on how this part is supposed to fit. Those are just some examples of. So some people say that the number of decisions that are made is just like this pyramid. That top managers don't make decisions every single day, but when they do, they're very important decisions. Then you follow it all the way down. Operational employees make lots of decisions daily, but their impact is relatively small. And so it's kind of a frequency, increases as it goes down, but importance goes up. Anyway, so continuing on page 18, they talk about top managers, develop long-range strategic plans. Middle managers provide direction and resources and performance feedback. Supervisors are all about, the direct operation and, did you do a good job? And do I have enough resources to do that? The day-to-day kind of things. And then, of course, the operational employees who are really the ones doing the transaction processing part, they're entering the data, they're doing the work. And they need information to handle the tasks at their level. Okay, so now on page 19, they talk about the modeling concept. We're going to end up modeling some businesses, and to create a business system, you really need to know lots of things. So they talk about the business model, the requirements model, the data model, object model, network model, and process model. And we are going to go through that in future chapters in a great deal of detail. But continuing on page 20, they talk about prototyping. And this is just a technique to you're developing a new system and you want to show it off rather quickly to get some feedback. So you don't wait until the entire thing is done and then go, ta-da, here it is. Instead, when you have one little tiny piece done, you rush on over and say, hey, let me show you this. Is this what you had in mind? Is there anything in here that looks kind of obvious that we need to change? And so you have this kind of iterative feedback early on by showing them things. And once again, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark. So we'll stop this and pick it up in just a few minutes.